I think for a long time, probably had the most valuable brand around because it had done the same thing. Today, we know Google does that. So branding for large companies, it's about top of mind. It's about being the leader in that. I think for us, as we look at ourselves as entrepreneurs and as small businesses, consultants, the brand is us. The brand is our name, and the brand is being the thought leader and top of mind and creating that image for yourself. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with the foundation. I love the idea of when you're not in the room, but what I heard you say that I think is even more powerful is when you become synonymous with a particular need and a particular value. So almost like when you become a verb, when a noun becomes a verb, like where you say, you know, you're going to become a, you know, you need to get if a situation like with a company where I was just doing a strategy session yesterday, and you talk about a company that's been really good at dominating a marketplace in a new way, which is like Netflix. So you say, it's like, oh, you're going to become Netflix when it becomes so synonymous with a particular situation. So what I love what you said is that it's absolutely when it's not in the room, but when your name becomes so synonymous with what a need is and a solution, and that it becomes the Kleenex and it becomes the FedEx and it becomes all those different things. But I would add another layer to it. My experience with branding really began when I was a consultant at Walt Disney World, and I was supporting Disney's Animal Kingdom when it was going through its rebranding phase. When the park was opened, it wasn't necessarily achieving the objectives that it was hoping, and so we had to go through this whole rebranding process, and I was working very closely with the branding team. And they said, branding is a promise that is made that is consistently delivered. So it's not just that I'm the thought leader in my particular area, it's that you are so clear on what it is that you offer and what your promise is, and you deliver it consistently on an ongoing basis. So brand is not something that you just sort of make up out of the air. Our brand is something that comes from within, because it has to be grounded in what you uniquely can offer and deliver on. It can't just be what you hope or you wish it could be, but it has to come from that internal space. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It does. And so if we're talking, I mean, we're talking, the people who are watching this here today, I think are mostly consultants, or mostly even small business owners. I know that there's a few of those, and they're working as individuals. And so when you and I talk about Coke and Netflix and Kleenex and all of that, that makes sense for the larger companies. I think we need to probably, this is called about the ROI of YOU. How do we transfer that to us? So what I'd like to hear, though, is what your take, kind of converting that from what you just said. Let's talk about how we transfer it to solo practitioner consultants, to entrepreneurs, to small business owners, because I think small business, you're doing the same thing. You're an expert in your field.
Well, that's easy. It's that the same principle is that you have to create a brand that's based on your unique expertise that you're positioning out there, not what you wish your expertise to be, but what it authentically is. That your brand is something that you organically uncover and extend, but it's not something that you just sort of say, hey, you know, I really like the idea of doing X, and you try to create a brand around it. That you have to really go inside to say, what is it that is my powerhouse? What is my power alley that I can offer up, and build your brand off of that? Because that's where these successful companies have branded themselves, is that they use their core competency as the foundation of their brand, rather than what they aspire to be. It's what they actually are.
So we finally found something that I can actually debate a little bit with you. That's good. I knew it wouldn't take long. See, I'm not that deep of a guy. Everything you said, I don't necessarily disagree with, but I think for us, I think for the people watching this who are, again, a consultant, a speaker, a business coach, small, it's about the name. Now, yes, you have to deliver. Obviously, if you don't deliver, you're going to be out of business very soon. But it's about the name. Let me give you a quick example. When I was away a couple weeks ago, I got a phone call from a gentleman who said, I was at a meeting, and one of your clients, Gary, I'll just give his first name, Gary said, you need to talk to Dan Weedin. Well, what had happened was Gary, who is a commercial property manager for a fairly large business that's been my client for years, was in a meeting with a bunch of colleagues who were debating something that was dealing with insurance and risk management. And Gary finally stood up and said, you guys are all wasting your time. What you need to do is just call Dan Weedin. that's brand. And I'm fortunate that Gary thought so. Now, it's because of years of delivering, I guarantee you that. But what I really believe is brand is breaking down to your name, whether it's your personal name or your company name, that you are now top of mind as the thought leader. And how do you develop that? I have some ideas on how to do that, but I'm just going to throw it back into your court.
Well, I don't think we're saying different things, because they're only saying to get Dan Weedin because there's something that you have to offer that they do not have, and they have clarity on what's the context or situation that your help is needed and that why you are the best solution. So going to the idea of branding is that if you did not own and have this level of expertise, they wouldn't be saying get Dan Weedin, but they have a particular situation that they get it. Like, this is when you should be called in. And I think the other part of the conversation, what you just said, is your name. I think this is where a lot of consultants that I work with, they get really wrapped around what's my cool, sexy name that I want to create for my company. And I think that's one of the things that I learned from Alan, actually, is that you are the brand. It's not that cool name. It's not having some sort of aspirational thing. Like, when I did meet Alan when I first started my business, I probably wouldn't have named the business Accelerate. I would have just gone with my name.
Betsy, I'm going to tell you the exact same. I agree with you 100% on that. 10 years ago, I started Toro Consulting, and if I had to do it over, I love my logo, and I'd do the logo again, but it would be under Dan Weedin Consulting or Weedin Consulting or something like that. I'm not going to change it now because it's too much work, but I've really now worked hard at flipping that, and so I'm in agreement with you there.
And I think I would want to round out this whole idea of, because why your name's so important and why it's all about you. I remember several years ago, I was having dinner with a friend of mine who's actually, you mentioned Google, he works for Google. And he was asking me, well, what do you do? And I gave him some sort of aspirational thing. It's like, well, I help ignite leadership and organizational performance. And I'm giving this high level, like, aspirational thing. And I remember him, like, looking over the table at me. He's like, but what do you do? What do you do? And he asked me again. It's like, well, again, I improve performance. I enhance potential. I help making companies bigger or better, more, whatever I was saying. And he's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, what do you do? And I remember leaving that dinner completely, like, shattered, of saying, oh my gosh, all the work that I've been doing. But he challenged me to really dig deep to say, what is it that I do? And he gave me a much better format to think about the value that I create, in which it really goes down to the essence of brand. You know your brand is working is when you're at a networking party and somebody asks you, like this guy asked me, well, what do you do? And you could say, well, when, and you could fill in the blank on the situation that the client would find themselves in, their pressing issues and concerns. Well, what I do is, and you talk about your expertise in such a way that you can connect the dot between their need and your solution, and then you go into what leads to. So there's a lot of consultants that will either get way caught into their methodology of, well, I do strategy, I do training, I do speaking, I do this, I do that, but they can't collect it into some sort of expertise, or they'll get so stuck on the visionary type of thing of, hey, I make healthy organizations, I make leaders, create environments that make people want to go to work, and I help create this kind of environment, or I accelerate results, but what they're not doing is connecting the dots.
Well, so what we're really doing is, and that's a great example, what we're really doing is kind of going back to the very foundation of what we as consultants do, and that's a value proposition. So when I work with my clients that I coach and mentor, we always start, I don't care how long they've been in, we always start with the value proposition. And one of the ways that I try to simplify it for them is to say,